Greetings to my fellow peace blunderers, and today I'm coming to you with another instructive video. Today I'm playing some rapid games against players who are rated, well, around 1,000, 1,200 tops. And I'm of course going to comment on everything that is happening on the board, and I'm going to provide you with some insightful live analysis, as well as showcasing some of the typical mistakes that you guys are making at this level. Now, I am assuming that most of you guys watching are in and around that rating, give or take, but if you want me to break down some games against the higher rated bracket or a lower rated bracket, please let me know in the comments below. Of course, I will oblige. Okay, and we've got a 933 from Israel. Very interesting. I'm going to play e4. E4 is something that I guess 80 to 85% of you guys are playing on move 1 at this sort of rating. And they're responding very classically with e5, very respectable. And the first thing that I would like to say right from the get-go is that a lot of the games on this level are played like knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, or bishop b5. Games at this level are very, very, very common when they play out like this. What I recommend is that if you're about 1,000 and if you're looking to boost your rating quite a bit, I recommend you to play some interesting offbeat openings. Openings that your opponents will not be all too prepared for. I know it's a cliche to say, just play a rare opening and then out-prepare your opponent. But on this rating, the efficiency of playing some weird openings such as bang, the King's Gambit, for example, f4, is going to be as high as ever. What I mean by that is, if you play the King's Gambit against players who are higher rated, 1,200, 1,400, 1,600, the higher you go along the ladder, the less efficient the offbeat openings become, because the opponents are much better prepared, just because they've got an all-round better opening, catalog. However, when you play someone who is 1,000 rated, when you're a 1,000 rated player yourself, just spend maybe not too much time. We're not talking about spending days in the opening library. We're talking about just an hour or two looking at the first opening moves, and trust me, they will startle most of your opponents at this rating. And since we got him to capture the pawn, which is the best move, we are going to play knight f3. And believe it or not, although I played the King's Gambit, it does not mean that if you're someone who plays e4, e5, knight f3, this game has already lost its value, because you're never going to get the positions like these in your game, which is not true, and I'm about to prove that. In the meantime, this move, bishop c5, I don't like already. For a very simple reason. When we play a King's Gambit or a flank gambit, in general, what we want to do is that we want to get rid of this e5 pawn, which we did. And why do we want to get rid of the pawn? Of course, they're controlling the d4 square with that pawn. And with this pawn gone, and with the control over d4 gone, I can very easily expand with tempo with d4 myself. Because d4 is protected twice, and the bishop is now having to retreat, and look at this wonderful center. This center is just amazing. And on top of that, I get to capture the pawn back. So you could argue that, we haven't even played a real gambit, because the material is equal. And you've got to fancy white's position much more, because of the huge central control and superior development. So then playing knight f6, a very typical move. And nothing wrong with that. Whenever your opponent plays a move like knight f6 and you can possibly insert e5, this is something that you've always got to calculate. Can I play e5 now? Does it benefit me? I'm not so sure, because if I play e5, they're going to play knight to d5, and the knight on d5 is feeling pretty good. If I try to scare it away with c4, don't forget I've got a hanging bishop on f4, so I will just lose a bishop. Instead, I'm just going to reply with defending that pawn with development of my knight on c3. Very simple. And they have castled, which I am yet to do, And this is a very interesting situation where I can castle either way. And when you've got your f-pawn missing in some positions, you may have your f-pawn missing. You should consider twice, maybe to castle queenside even. Because with the f-pawn missing, with this diagonal being exposed and with this bishop being already there, your king on g1 could get in slight trouble sometimes. So it doesn't hurt to try and maybe castle queenside. Tuck away the king in that corner and use the fact that you've got a semi-open f-file here. Maybe double up your rooks even along that file and keep pushing. I'm not saying that castling queenside here is the best hands down move, but still, why not? Before I castle queenside though, I've got to address this little knight. So they play knight c6, which is again a fine developing move, I think. And the knight, if goes to b4, it attacks my queen. There is nothing inherently wrong with that. Sometimes when the knight goes to b4, it attacks your queen. The queen just retreats, and it's actually not a big deal. But I want to play e3 to prevent knight b4 just in case, because I don't really want to lose tempi in this specific position, moving my queen somewhere else. So I'm going to castle now. They played d6 to open up this bishop. Maybe they're going to play bishop g4 now and pin this knight a little bit to my rook, which is okay. If they do that, well, I can always play h3 and ask them questions of that bishop. They may as well play knight g4 now, which is a very common thing when you castle queenside as white or black. Doesn't matter. You see, whenever, this is very important, you castle, so they played bishop there, okay. Whenever you castle queenside, chances are, well, your rook ends up on d1 or on d8, and chances are your other rook is still stuck on h1 or h8. And that means that the f2 square or the f7 square can be sometimes used to fork your rooks with the knight. And I'm sure, as I'm saying it right now to you, you already remember some of the cases when it happened to you. So, that's a bit of a reminder to you. So they're attacking my knight. And, well, I've got to watch my pawn, because the pawn is attacked twice and at the moment is defended thrice. But if I play h3 now and they takes with queen, the pawn is left pretty much undefended. Well, not sufficiently defended. So instead of h3 immediately, I'm just going to retreat my bishop to e3, just shore my position up, because I've got a very nice center. I don't want it to be broken down very easily. And now I may consider at some point playing h3. And if they do capture my knight, of course I can take with the pawn and solidify the e4 pawn as well. So I think it's quite nice for us as it stands. Of course, I'm 4 minutes down on the clock, but it's okay. So I'm aiming to explode my center. They're aiming to explode my center. Very interesting idea. I don't know if that is so good for them. First of all, when they play d6, d5, you always need to consider the consequences of e5. For example, if I play e5 now, I'm going to attack that knight. And the knight, where is the knight going? If knight goes to e4, I can capture it. Pawn takes, queen takes, and I will be up a pawn. They will have rook e8 attacking my queen, but remember that they still will have a bishop hanging on g4. So you always got to calculate through these possibilities. So e5, what if bishop takes immediately? Then takes with pawn, and the e4 square for the knight is unavailable. So it does look like e5 is a proper fine move. I don't see much wrong with this. I do not see much wrong with this. So, aha. Oh. Okay, interesting. First of all, I mean, of course, it's aiming to get some sort of tactic, but I can just take here, right? So I guess the idea was that I cannot take with the knight because my rook is hanging. Well, technically, I can still take with the knight and just take a free piece and sack the exchange for that piece. But I'm going to take with a pawn. And now I'm not seeing the tactic. Maybe there was something with d4, walking my bishop and knight, but d4 is just not sufficiently protected if the pawn does go to d4. And this does not work either, because I can just take and d4 still doesn't work. d4 still doesn't work, I'm afraid, my friend. d4 still does not work. So they've taken my knight, and yeah, I guess I'm a piece up now for virtually nothing. I'm going to let's take with a pawn. Let's take with a pawn. By taking with a pawn, I'm opening up this file, the G file, and the pawn can always go to F4 to support my E5 pawn, which is already quite nice, like this. Yeah. So the only thing that we need to watch, of course, is the time. I've got to play a little bit faster, maybe talk a bit less, but don't worry, we've got this covered. This pawn is a little bit hanging, but let's just put the rook first on the g1 square, and then maybe create some mating threats along that file. So the pawn moves. The pawn moves to f6. Of course, it is best not to take because my queen will be lost. And watch out for these sorts of pins. Don't blunder your queens, people. I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to put my queen there and threaten mate in 1. Something that will have to be definitely addressed by my opponent. There are multiple ways to address it, some better and some worse. This one I don't particularly like. This one, I'll be honest, I don't necessarily like. Let's bring our knight into play, shall we? Let's take that pawn because it was hanging. And let's bring the knight closer to the king's side, to maybe get some mating threats in with some other pieces. On top of that, I've just opened up this little diagonal there, which I'm going to exploit as well. Let's just make sure that all of our pieces are integrated into our attack very organically and very smoothly. So they are moving the king away from that diagonal, which is, you know, quite a good idea, actually. Not gonna lie. And now with my queen and rook battery staring at this pawn, I'm just thinking I am going to proceed with the disruption of the king side. I'm just going to play h4, h5. I'm going to put pressure on that pawn. Yeah, this is not a move that I like, I'll be honest. When your pawn is attacked, you don't get it even more attacked. I can take with the queen, but they will retake with the queen, and although I do have a piece up, so exchange of queens probably favors me. This is something that you should also keep in mind. You don't exchange pieces because you are up material. You exchange pieces when your pieces are worse than your opponent's. My queen is so much superior to my opponent's queen in this position, so I don't want my queen off the board, surely. And now I'm just transferring my pieces to pressure h7. My knight can also go to f6 at some point. So they are being a little bit scared, Let's put the knight on f6. Let's threaten to capture on h7 already, because h7 is attacked twice and defended only once. This move, I don't know what to say about this move. This move looks like the king may enter a mating net very, very soon. I'm just moving my queen there to take away the f5 square from the king. Yeah, and the king moves back. Okay, I'm now taking with the rook. And where is the king supposed to go? The only square is king f8, because don't forget... Oh, right. They still got this square, which is something that I did not consider, but let's just play a rook to h1. And, you know, if they move to f8, I probably have a harder time. Interesting. So if king f8 in this position, I probably have a slightly harder time delivering mate from there. Probably. But since the king went back to g6, and this is exactly why I played the queen g4. I just moved the queen a little bit closer so that the queen is taking away the f5 square from the king. And yeah, this is not going to help prevent mate, because it's all about the rooks. It's not about the knight, my friend. Good game, good game. And I hope this one was quite instructive. So yeah, looking back, like I said about my very first point about offbeat openings, we played f4 and then they took knight f3, which is, you know, the main theoretical move, and it's not very difficult to learn, right? Knight f3. And they immediately make a quite big mistake with bishop c5. And this is what I'm talking about. When you play openings like these, you are already in a lot of games are going to gain an advantage from like move 3, 4, or 5, because people don't know how to react. And if you just prepare yourself for these mistakes, you will be much better off. d4, and I've got just a brilliant position already. All right, we've got a game with black as well. It only makes sense that we've got one with white and one with black. We've got a 940 from Singapore. And let's see. Oh, d4, wow. That's very interesting. It's quite uncommon, but, you know, poof, very interesting. So, of course, the d4, there are lots of possible replies. d5, knight f6, c5 even. For the last couple of months, I've been practicing c6 as a move, and this is what I am going to play, because c6 is actually a very interesting idea. It's very flexible. If they play c4 now, which most people will play in this position, I can always transpose into the Slav without too much problem with e5. And, you know, c6 is a move that you should, guys, consider. If you don't know how to play with black against d4, think about the c6 move on move 1. And, you know, if they choose to play in this position, e4, taking over the center, transpose into the Caro-Kann with d5. And if you're a Caro-Kann player by default, this will be very familiar to you. And the point is, even if you don't play the Caro-Kann, if they play e4 and then you play d5, chances are, I mean, they are not an e4 player, so they don't play against the Caro-Kann themselves. This is going to be a very interesting duel in that case. You will not be at a disadvantage. They are playing knight f3 though. Maybe they are considering to play the London still with the subsequent bishop f4. Well, if they do decide to play the London, we cannot really stop them too much. We're going to reply with knight f6. These positions are going to be... Ooh! e4. But this just hangs a pawn. It just looks like it hangs a pawn. Again, sometimes when you play at a 1000 level, when people encounter the positions they don't encounter very often, and c6 on move 1 is probably not something that they see every game, sometimes people will make mistakes. I'm not saying that they blundered this pawn because I played c6, but there could be some correlation. Let's just capture that pawn. And I don't see the compensation. Sometimes when someone plays a gambit, there is a compensation. I don't see a compensation there, because my knight does not get harassed all over the board after I take on e4. And it just looks like I got a pawn for 3. Yay! So knight c3. I can take. I don't have to take. I can play knight back. I can play d5 to protect the knight. But, you know, since we are a pawn up, and we can ruin the pawn structure a little bit, with pawn takes c3, they've got a slightly ruined pawn structure. There is nothing wrong with this. I'm going to play d5 now, a very simple move, because I want to develop my bishop. And I could still develop my bishop after playing d6 as well, but I want to move my pawn central and, as close to the center as possible. I don't have to play d6 if I can play d5. Why not? So they are trying to fix their pawn structure with c4. Actually, not a bad idea, attacking the central pawn with the flank pawn like so. I am going to... I'm thinking whether to take or to leave them to take. Good question. I think I'm just going to allow them to take. So take 6. Probably they might be thinking of delivering a check on bishop b5. Probably. Usually, when you've got a position like this is actually quite important as well. When you play a Slav-like structure, and when you get your bishop out, and when you allow them to take, you've got to watch out for possible queen b3s, because this pawn is now vulnerable, and this pawn is now vulnerable. I'm not saying in this position it is the case, because first of all, queen b3 isn't possible, but when you play Slav structures, and when you play your bishop out, and sometimes even lock your bishop out, this pawn could get quite vulnerable. You've got to watch out. h3, attacking my bishop. Of course, I don't want to blunder it. I've got to address this issue. I'm thinking... I don't think there is much wrong with retreating, but I would actually like to take this knight. And I expect queen takes. And now I'm just going to protect this pawn with e6. And now I've got a nice little pawn chain. The reason I took is very simple. The knight on f3 is controlling e5 and is controlling d4 and defending the d4 pawn by extension. When I take this knight, this pawn can become quite weak when I play like knight c6, for example. And if they decide to defend that pawn with c3, well, c3 is also going to be quite weak. So yeah, c3 can become very weak when I play knight c6. I put the rook there, and then when the knight goes somewhere, the rook is going to be pressuring that pawn massively. So this pawn, this c pawn, is going to be quite a liability, long-term strategic liability for white. It looks like they can get rid of this liability. They can try and get rid of it with something like c4. But I do fear about their king's safety if they do play c4 now, because I've got all possible checks coming along this diagonal. So probably not the best thing to do. Why is it my turn to move? Ah, they sorry, I was looking at the wrong screen all the time. I didn't realize they played a move, so they did. Oh god. Yeah. So they did play bishop b5 check eventually. They did play it, and they also needed to be very careful. Remember what I said about the dead zone, the 4th and the 5th rank. If they're not careful about the bishop, at some point, maybe, I could have even played queen a5 check and taking that bishop. Of course, they're not allowing me that because they just take my knight. And, that's the end of my knight. Nothing I could do about that, because both moves were checks. They were really forcing. I had to address those. And now they castle. So, now attacking the c2 pawn, which I said was going to be a weakness, is not as straightforward. But wait for it, wait for it. We're going to have a lot of nice little central control once I play c5 and challenge this pawn. So they're playing the rook onto the to the open file, which is not a bad idea actually. They want to play maybe rook b7 at some point. An idea that I have to watch out for. But so far so good. So far so good. I've got a 2-1 central pawn majority. And even if I play c5 and then I play like c3 defending. Okay, so Aha, it's a very interesting idea. So they're forcing pretty much a bishop exchange, because if I don't take the bishop and try to save my bishop, they will take my rook. And I will be down an exchange. So that's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. Let's... The position is okay. I'm up a pawn after all. Remember that they lost a pawn at the beginning of the game. And what I am thinking of right now is that I want to put my queen somewhere, maybe to f6 or c7. I haven't decided yet which one is better. I think c7 is going to be slightly better. I want to push c5, and I want to basically start pushing my pawns forward, utilizing the fact that I've got a one pawn advantage. And with queen c7, I'm also disallowing rook b7, at least for the moment. I'm also thinking of putting another rook behind my queen and start pushing the pawns. This game is very different to the game number 1 that we had, because this one is not as tactical, not as fireworky. This move I don't like. Never play f3! Rawr! But I don't understand what the purpose of this move is, I'll be honest. I'm trying to come up with an excuse, but I can't. Of course, f3, the main drawback is that it weakens the dark square diagonal, exposes the king a little bit, but like, what does f3 achieve? Can anyone tell me? Maybe in the comments someone can understand the nature of this move, because I am not sure I do. I am not sure I do. Like, f3 doesn't... What does f3 do? This is the mystery that we have to solve now. So rook goes there. Why did you play f3, my friend? Why? Wow. I don't know. I don't know. Let's just push the pawn, as I promised I would do. And with a pawn up, it should be a relatively easy conversion. So if takes, queen takes, rook takes, we are attacking this pawn. We're possibly going to double up our rooks. Aha. King there. Okay, so now I understand. Now I understand f3, but it doesn't make it a better move, I suppose. So they wanted to play f3 so the king can come out, but you don't do that when the queens are still on the board. Like, when you expose your king to such an extent with the queen still on the board, this can be very dangerous, my friend. I've just taken a free pawn, and I've opened up this line. This is getting very, very dangerous. Yeah, and now we're talking about another pawn loss. Another pawn loss after queen takes on c2. Probably the rook is going to block. But if rook blocks, then I take this rook. So probably not the best idea. And now, with 3 pawns up, this is going to be quite easy to win. I'm thinking of a very cheeky method of winning in this position. I'm thinking of transferring my queen there, and then putting my rook on c2 and delivering this interesting mate. Well, we could still start capturing pawns if we so wish. So queen e7. Does it stop our plan? Not really. Not really. It doesn't look like queen e7 does anything to us. There aren't any sacrifices that I see, and it does look like with the king being trapped in this sort of fashion, with my rook controlling the 2nd rank and my queen about to go to the 1st rank, this is going to be made quite soon. And I don't see a way of stopping it, I'll be honest. If I played against an engine would start sacrificing their rooks all over the shop to at least delay mate, but a human would not do that. The human would probably resign in this position, or just let me mate. But yeah, it all the trouble started with a quite random, unexpected blundering of the central pawn, and when you blunder a central pawn like that, it's always going to be felt. And again, like I said, the cause and effect is unclear. How much is that down to the fact that I played c6 on move 1 and I surprised him a little bit? Maybe there is something to it, but I don't know. And after the pawn was blundered, we just played a very simple game. A very simple game. Aha, so they did play rook there. Well, yeah, it's not going to do too much because I'm just going to... Should I play there? Well, let's just capture the rook and let's just mate on g2. And this is going to be the end of that. Well played by my opponent. You know, they tried to hang on quite well after they lost that central pawn, but still the damage was done very, very quickly in this game. Interestingly enough, the damage was done very quickly in the previous game as well. Remember that bishop c5 move on move 3? And coincidentally enough, on move 3, they moved the e4 pawn and blundered it. So something wrong with move 3 today for our friends from the 1000 rated bracket. Okay, so what did you guys think of this video? Please let me know in the comments if you want to have more videos like these when I just play games and I talk through my thought process. And if you just so happened to find this video useful, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitch. I stream Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Find me on chess.com, join our Discord, all that good stuff. And I'm going to talk to you very soon, my favorite unintentional gambiters. Love you all. See ya in the next one.